Welcome back to Under Oath. We have one of the biggest NFL storytellers, Dan Pompei. I have a ridiculous amount of questions and a short time to get there. I feel like Smokey the Bandit in a way. Now, you've been the senior writer at The Athletic for so many years. You've told so many stories about professional athletes and professional football. Which one do you think haunts you the most?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's usually the last one that you're thinking most about because you put so much time and effort into these things, and then you move on to the next one. I always feel a little bit funny as a storyteller the way I do it because I kind of parachute into people's lives. And, I'm encamped with them a little bit, and I kind of try to find out as much as I can about them. And then I parachute back up and I'm gone. And I think, I just did a story recently on Steve Young and the fact that he is now coaching his girls in flag football. Of course, he was not renewed by ESPN in the off season as a commentator for their Monday Night Football games. And he was looking for a new outlet for football, and this kind of came out of nowhere. And it was interesting catching up with him and spending time with him and his family and finding why he is where he is in his journey now. And he's also part of our top 100 list, too.
When we talk about fame in football and everything else and people's ability to walk away from the game or what they're able to do afterwards, I mean, I can't even imagine how tough it is when you're part of this thing that's so much bigger than any other life you could be living and suddenly have to fill that void.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players struggle with it, obviously, right? It's a big deal. And football goes from the center of your life to what is the center of my life. And now with someone like Steve Young, it was a very easy transition because he was prepared for it. And he actually ended up, a very successful businessman with his own company. And really successful. So I think, there's other elements of life beyond football, though. There's family life and there's social integration and, your self-image and things like that. So it's almost always a transition that I think has some surprises and difficulties. And, the ones who handled it well, I think are really to be admired.
Now, I had mentioned earlier when I first started off that you're a storyteller. And as a writer, there's a fine line between being a writer and a journalist. And those two sometimes don't meet.
Yeah, that's a really interesting statement. And I know what you mean. I think sometimes to tell the stories that you want, you have to gain the trust of people, right? And you have to be kind of sensitive to them and what their story is. And sometimes as a journalist, you just want to dig and dig and dig and find the truth. And I think really the most important word is the truth, because whether you're a storyteller, a writer, journalist, it really everything you do is about the truth and uncovering the truth and being honest to the truth.
We live under this concept: if it bleeds, it leads. And bleeding sometimes is embarrassment. It's not only has to be physical issues. It could be just raw embarrassment. It could be sexual. It could be anything that we know will get people's ears to pop. Now, I don't have to do that with my show. I get the benefit of just, whatever question I feel like I can ask. But how difficult is it for you sometimes when they're going, I got to bring this up again. I got to talk about this again. I'd rather move on.
Yeah, I think it can be difficult. Most times people who have those issues that bleed know that they're going to be asked about them. Oftentimes they have stock responses to them. I think sometimes it's a challenge to kind of get the reality of what they're really thinking or feeling about it, and to move past the stock answer. But I think it is, it's part of what I have to do. It's part of obviously the individual's journeys when they have those issues. So it's an interesting part of it all. Yes.
We have a lot of things going on right now. For example, what we decide we want to talk about. Deion Sanders was the hot story in college football, even though he's not coaching the best team. Sometimes we're more interested in the drama behind something than the actual product we're actually tuning in for.
Yeah, Jeff. I think one of the things that I have been more aware of lately is that uh, sometimes we're drawn to big names, right? And we want to write about big names. And obviously, those stories or those subjects seem to resonate with a lot of people. Anything about Travis Kelsey right now will blow up because of, what he's doing off the field with Taylor Swift. But I think, there's a lot more meat on the bone oftentimes when you have something like what we used to call, when I was coming up in journalism, a Hey Mabel story. A Hey Mabel story is something that, when someone hears it or hears about it and they see their next door neighbor, Mabel, over the backyard fence, they say, "Hey, Mabel, did you hear about this?" Uh, so I think, that element of, is it something that people want to talk about? Is it something that people are drawn to? It's really not a revolutionary concept. I mean, there's been a lot of content producers, media outlets that have thrived on Hey Mabel stories. I mean, the New York Post is an example that they do a lot of Hey Mabel journalism. They put spins on it oftentimes, which a lot of media outlets do now. But I think, there's something to like dangling that information that people are going to want to turn their heads about. Even social media is a lot of Hey Mabel. You see it on Facebook. People share things because they appeal to them and they want to let someone else see it as well.
These are tough because I know that sometimes when you report on the negativity of some athlete or some team, and later on you might have to talk to that athlete. I mean, is there ever that uncomfortableness that exists when you've covered a terrible part of somebody's life, but then you have to talk to them afterwards, and try to move on or try to, I'm sure you get some emails every once in a while from somebody going, "Hey, listen, that was unfair," and it might be personal.
Yeah, certainly that's part of it. I think it probably was more prevalent in my life when I was a beat writer. I was around a team, basically living with a team all the time, and you had to see people day after day, and you had to report and write on them every day. And oftentimes they didn't like the way you perceive something, and oftentimes, you know, people don't see their own reality as as how other people see it. So, but I think it's still a factor. I always try to be upfront and honest with people, and not uh, let them know, what I think or what I see. And after I write a story, I'll often, usually, will uh, text a link of it to the people and my subjects. And if they've got something to say, I'm here to listen. Debate whatever, or agree, disagree. I think it's important as a journalist. Again, maybe this is an old concept, but what we learned a long time ago was you have to be accountable. Back when you were a beat person, they said you got to show up in the locker room the next day, and I think there's something to that.
When you talk about this and we talk about brought up the struggles of dealing with this profession, when I was a sports agent, it took me 2 years after leaving to be able to love the game again. You get caught up in, things that have nothing to do with happens on the field that, it's hard for you to appreciate the game. I mean, have you ever had that lull where you're going, I just don't even want to watch football for a week or two? Or is it like, no, this is my job. I love it.
No, I think I've always loved the game, and I still love the game. I've never really experienced that emotion that you talk about. But of course, I look at it from a different perspective than you did as an agent, So I can understand how you felt the way you did. But um, there's a lot of elements of the league, the game, sports, whatever, that are unseemly that you say, I don't like that part of it. But I think, the greatness of the competition, the game itself, and the strategy, and the abilities of the players, and the strategies of the coaches, the mindset, all of it to me overwhelms the negative.
I love to talk about this with people in the know. And I forget sometimes that I'm here to also talk about things that they're enjoying right now. Now, you're here to promote the Football 100. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, so Mike Sando and myself, along with the staff of the Athletic, uh, voted on the top 100 football players of all time. And we had a number of meetings. It started out with a committee of 5 of us, and we had a number of meetings, and we had some reduction votes, and we come up with a list. And this was a number of years ago, and we kind of refined the list over time. And Mike and I took over the project, and we have this book out, the Football 100, that has the top 100 ranked, and we've got profiles written on each of the top 100 players. And it was quite an interesting process. Obviously, it's highly subjective, and I like to think of it that there's no right ways of ranking these players or wrong ways, but it was certainly challenging, to take everything into consideration, especially players who played in different eras, players who play at different positions, and really give everyone their proper due.
When you bring up the top 100, I remember I was in Vegas and Pete Rose was signing at this terrible sports store. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I felt bad. And he's all alone. Nobody's there. And I'm thinking to myself, this is one of the greatest baseball players who've ever played the game. And he's never going to get into the Hall of Fame. He's never going to have these opportunities. He's always going to be this pariah because of what he did. And I guess the question is this, is when we talk about the top 100, do we also put in their personal challenges, or do we just rate them for what they did on the field?
Yeah, we kind of took the approach that the Pro Football Hall of Fame takes, and I am a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, so is Mike Sando. So it was kind of natural for us to separate what players did off the field. And we did that. We did not consider, for instance, O.J. Simpson is number 52 on our list. We didn't consider whatever controversies there are with him or whatever bad movies he made or anything like that. We didn't consider Lawrence Taylor's off the field problem. He's number 4. We just looked at these guys as football players, their contributions to the NFL, and how great they were. And obviously, they're all, with the exception of some current guys and some guys who recently retired, Pro Football Hall of Famers. And there's many more Pro Football Hall of Famers that could even be included in our top 100 list. So, I think their greatness, there really is no debating any of them in terms of what they contributed and what they meant to their teams and their teammates during their periods.
Now, I actually appreciate that, because you're actually rating people for the job they did more than who they are as individuals, because you always hear that line, never meet your heroes. And I think nothing applies more than in professional sports and maybe, let's just say acting. If you had to, how can I put it? If you had to take one person to dinner and spend a whole evening with somebody that you just liked in football, who would that be?
Are you talking about someone in
Like a
history,
player?
someone,
No, just a current player.
any player, a current player? Well, can I take Tom Brady, or is he not a current player anymore?
No, you could take Tom Brady.
Okay, I'll take Tom Brady. I think he's fascinating, and I think he's really. I've gotten to know him a little bit, but not too much, and would love to get to know him better. Would love to understand his greatness. He's number one on our list, and there's nobody on the list who has done. I don't mean this in a condescending way, but I should say it this way: who's gotten more out of what God has given him than Tom Brady. Starting out as a sixth round pick and coming in and becoming the greatest player of all time. And I think really what he did with Tampa, winning a Super Bowl there, really just solidified his case and put to rest any doubts that, well, maybe it's Belichick. I mean, yeah, Belichick obviously might be the greatest coach of all time too, but the fact that Brady was able to lift a second organization and really put his imprint on that team, I think without a doubt made him, that solidified his case as number one on our list.
When you bring up Tom Brady, and when I think of Tom Brady, I also think of Kobe Bryant, not in the sense of that they had equal talent, but how serious they took their game, how seriously they took practice, how, when Kobe, could have done 2 workouts a day and been fantastic, he does 3. Tom Brady never had an off season, never did these things. I mean, how do you teach that, or is that just innate in certain athletes?
Well, I think, it's interesting. Kobe and Tom had different backgrounds, but, Tom, who I could speak to more knowledgeably about, came from a background in which he was always trying to prove himself. And I think, he never really got over the fact that he was a sixth round pick, and that, even at Michigan, when he was a college quarterback, he wasn't always, the clear number one quarterback. So he came into the league really trying to prove something, and he never stopped trying to prove something. He's probably still trying to prove something today. And I think that's common with a lot of great players. There's a lot of players on this list who were phenomenally talented, beyond the norm. But I don't think there's anyone on this list who didn't work as hard as everyone else in the league or harder during their period. Because the truly great ones have it all, and having it all means also having that fire burn within you hotter and higher than it burns within other people. And I think if you look at the list, you'll see that in all of them. You don't see anyone who just kind of coasted through. You see it. You see someone at every spot in 100 who was completely committed and dedicated to having a spot on this list one day.
With less than a minute left, I guess the question I'm going to ask, with a minute 20 seconds, what do you think is more important for a player on these lists, heart or talent?
Well, you can't make this list without either. So, there's no one on this list who had an incredible heart but mediocre talent, and there's no one on this list who had incredible talent but a mediocre heart. So I just think they go together, and without both, you're not great.
Well, I really appreciate that, Dan. I have this great love for sports, and I know how difficult it is, a job that you do. So I can't thank you enough for being here, and I hope to have you again.
I enjoyed the conversation, Jeff. Thank you.